Good afternoon. Hi, Bill.
Hi, Bill.
We've been sat here for the last 3 or 4 weeks.
I've 3 or 4 years.
Well, you have, I haven't, but we've been slightly struggling for, what to say. Everything's a bit savvy, but suddenly there's a slightly different air about markets. Suddenly everyone's slightly panicking.
Yeah.
Why? They're struggling to find a reason.
Well, you English have had this tradition about sell in May and go away. Well, maybe we've just been delayed this year to sell the first week of July and then go on holiday.
Right.
But I think one of the things we have to look at is, some of our viewers can go back like 3+ years ago when we were talking about Brexit. Was Greece going to leave the European Union? And we had 24% interest rates in Greece, and all the peripheral bond markets all went to multi-year highs. Now, as we've seen now, with negative deposit rates and I don't even know what you're going to call it anymore, but where the banks now are having to readjust their balance sheets, to take in bad loans and good banks and bad banks. Now, are we seeing a situation, of course, Espirito Santo is a classic example, being off 16% in the last 2 days. So are we seeing now, is that causing somewhat of a concern? Because, you look at a stock when it's off 2% or something like that, but 16% in 2 days. And also, whether I'm right or wrong, earlier this week, when BA, British Airlines, said that, unless your iPad, iPhone, everything else in the world was fully charged, you couldn't get on an airplane, okay? Now, then of course we saw the rest of the global airlines say basically the same thing. So we've seen a sell-off. It probably started more with Air France and KLM announcing just horrendous results. So then we saw a sort of sell-off in the airline stocks. But I think it's a question of, maybe I'm going to be totally wrong, because I think we were looking for a horrendous opening today when Wall Street opens in the next hour. But are we seeing, again, a continuing rotation? Again, the stocks that did well, made my profit, just like, maybe you were fortunate enough to buy Royal Mail or some of the other IPOs that went to the moon and you sold those.
It's not as if the mood in the global economy has changed much.
No.
Last week we didn't get a chance to chat, but it was a fantastic number. Everything's healthy.
Yes.
French and Italian industrial numbers this morning were pretty poor, but does anyone really care?
No, unless you live in France or Italy. Yeah. But the only thing there is, again, it goes back to, Mario Draghi did a speech last night. Well, the euro improved. Now, was that because, again, the Federal Reserve basically said almost word for word what I was expecting? Moderate growth, no interest rate hikes, so well into the next year or later. But I think it's a situation where, do we need, and it may be the Bank of England that takes that proverbial bull by the horns. Of course, being Pamplona week, it's always very important to say that.
Is it Pamplona week?
Yes.
You're wearing the wrong colour, Bill.
Well, I know that, but red, that does irritate the bulls. But it's a question that, had I been a member of the MPC today, I would have voted for a rate hike. So the simple fact is, we're going to get, my early call 6 months ago was, say, the first quarter of next year. I moved it into November. And if you look at short sterling, there is, one of these wink and a nod. It could be as early as October. Also, could we see next month, of course, is the August inflation report. So my feeling there is, it'll be interesting to see what the minutes were. Did anybody say, well, Governor, I think maybe we should think about raising rates, because we're going to have rates. And I think it's a question of, if you look at the editorials, if you look at the gurus and stuff, they say, we've had too easy money for such a long time. Somebody has to take charge and start raising rates. Now, a key may be the only thing we may get out of next week's announcement may be a reiteration of what Mario Draghi told us last week, saying, man, we don't really need monthly ECB meetings. So starting in January of next year, every 6 weeks now, Mark Carney said at least 3 times, well, he sort of feels the same thing. Maybe we don't need regular meetings. And also, I don't know whether we've talked about this before, it's not written in the Magna Carta that any moves by the Bank of England have to be plus or minus 25 basis points. What about 10? What about 15? Just to, quote, get the ball rolling.
Well, anyway, it'll happen sometime.
Yes.
It's hard from sort of a layman's point of view to understand how a 0.1 or 10-point basis move will have that much of an effect. But I'm sure it would.
I think, my feeling would be, it would be more of a psychological move, because we're always sort of knowing. When you were a child, okay, we knew Christmas was coming, but didn't you always try to sneak upstairs in the attic to see if you could sort of look at your presents before the 25th of December?
Fair enough. We had FOMC on Wednesday last night.
Yeah.
We didn't learn anything from there, did we?
No, not at all.
Same old.
Yes.
Yeah, that really was boring. I think.
And the only good thing is that, next Tuesday is the semi-annual Humphrey Hawkins. So
Who's he?
well, Humphrey Hawkins these were two senators, okay, back in let's say the mid-70s, okay, and basically they said what we've got to do is make the U.S. government more efficient. So what they did was they went through, and I mean this is an exaggeration, but they were looking at quangos. I mean we had like veterans of the Revolutionary War. I mean, these were quangos that had been around forever and ever and ever. So basically what they did is once a year, the Federal Reserve has to do it twice a year, they have to go before Congress and justify their existence, okay?
Right.
And
so that's what's happening. Right?
Yes, and that will be her semi-annual speech will be, to Congress next week. And basically it's a question of for the layman, this senator, that senator, or this parliamentarian, to put it in English terms, to sit down and say, well, Chairwoman, what does forward guidance, what does quantitative easing mean in reference to quote interest rates? So we may get more clues for that, because the next meeting is not until the 29th to 30th of this month.
Okay. And also the BOE this morning was exactly the same. Did they release everything else at the same time rather than?
No. I mean, only once I think. And this is probably very early, it may have been last July or August, when it was Carney's first meeting, has the Bank of England ever issued a statement when there was no change in anything, okay? So, as I say, and this is again just tradition, unless something happens, there is no statement.
Okay. So, looking forward from here, what's going to move the market? What have we got our eyes on? It's obviously US earnings season.
Yes.
Which has started okay.
Alcoa came in better than expected.
Yeah.
And you see, this is one of the things where, if you're a traditionalist, even a fundamentalist, there's nothing wrong with the earnings, okay? I mean, they're coming in nice. And I mean, even if you look at, I think Alan Greenspan made a comment about a recent book that he wrote, this was a couple of months ago, saying, if you look at earnings per share and EBITDA, all these numbers that everybody look at, the stock markets aren't overly excited, they are overbought, okay? And I mean, I think, again, it's a situation, I don't follow the stock markets that much, but I think a lot of it has been rotation. You've got some stocks that have done extremely well. I mean, just think here in the UK, if you bought Royal Mail, you made a nice profit on it, okay? If you bought some of the other, Poundland and some of the others, not so much, but it's a situation where, like anywhere else, if you're selective in what you do, but have we reached a point where now, I want cash in hand, because again, right or wrong.
Because my house is so expensive, I've got to buy such an expensive house.
Exactly right. You've got to get on the ladder. And even now, I think one of these think tanks who said consumer confidence, consumer this, that, and the other, here in the UK is the highest it's been since pre-Lehman days.
Brilliant. Well, let's finish up on your prediction for Sunday, the World Cup final. Who would you? I mean, the Argentines and the Germans aren't necessarily the two of English's most favoured countries on a military point of view, but who would you?
I have to go with Germany because Germany will continue to be ruthless. They will attack, and I think it's a question that I saw about 3/4 of last night's match. I mean, it was a question. Both teams, both Holland and Argentina, seem to be playing not to win, but I don't want to lose. Yeah. Feeling well, if it goes into penalties, so be it. But don't talk to Brazil, but Germany didn't have that feeling, and I was talking to my wife last night. After 11 minutes, Germany had scored. After 25 minutes, Germany was like 5-0 up. Okay, I mean, last night was watching the Argentina-Holland game. Would have made an insomniac go to sleep. But I have to feel that. I mean, I can see Germany winning by 3 or 4 goals because they're not going to let this get away from them.
Very good. All right. Well, thanks, Bill. See you next time.
Yeah.